Kia ora. Yeah, here we go. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you could find this room because we've struggled a little bit, but we all made it here. Wonderful panel, and thank you for coming to our little panel talking about spatial computing and gaming and all things immersive. I have a great panel here. We're not going to go into big intros because we only have 30 minutes and I want everyone to have an opportunity to ask questions and for this to be a nice opportunity to chat. There's lots of people I can see in the room who are already working in this industry, which is awesome. But yeah, so we have Stephen, Q and Sam. You can read about them. They're all amazing people doing really interesting cutting edge stuff in immersive technology. And I guess we want to just kind of go through a little bit about the future and what's coming, what we've been working on, what opportunities there are, some of those challenges that are happening, and maybe some of the exciting hardware that's coming out at the moment. And I guess when we decided on the panel name, or I thought about it, we put spatial in there because I think we love to mix and change terms all the time in this industry. We love to confuse people. We start with XR, there's VR, there's AR, there's spatial. And I guess at the moment, the newest term that's kind of capturing this type of technology is spatial computing and spatial gaming. And that's kind of capturing all of those kind of immersive technologies, whether it's augmented, placing that digital object within your real space while you look through a screen, be it a headset or a phone, virtual reality, obviously fully immersive. And I think there's just been some big technology changes in this last year that we've seen, and a few of us have been working on. Some of us, including Q, have got some long history working on some of the hardware himself. And that it really kind of is about this next generation of being able to kind of really interact with this content, for it to be spatially anchored within the space, for it to be able to be, for us to be really knowing the environment. And so, yeah, we just kind of want to go from here. So I think we'll start off, with maybe Q to talk us through first, a little bit about kind of, some of the new and exciting hardware and software and, what's coming up and what, let's have a little chat about some of that stuff because you've got some good experience in this.
Yeah, so been in the space probably from like Google Cardboard was probably my first Oculus DK1 up until like when Orion just got shipped. So that's internal dev kit. So that's like 100 grams. So that's really exciting. So on the trajectory of where everyone is like, think I was working on that like 3 years ago. So they're in the lab, way more advanced things than that. So if you think that the reason why it's not out is because it's too expensive. So looking at Vision Pro that don't tell us anything, other than if you're a nerd like me reading their patents, you definitely know they've got something half its weight, double its power. When that drops, who knows? But that's like very, very clear that once you go internal, that's just how it is. Like, and then it becomes cadence. And Zuck doesn't say in his keynote that like what Orion should have been released as a kit to the community, but the cost. He seems to be sticking to that. So he won't. It seems that's Meta's plan to be the Android and that cost point that's accessible. And then you say, what is Vision Pro? They're going to stay with Apple's model of being expensive, high-end, that other end of the scale. But they're going to have to probably do what they do with their products, like when you get the $1,000 iPhone and the $500 iPhone. They're going to be thinking like that. And then within that, I'm more interested in like the statistical analysis of the world, like what SLAM cameras are doing and understanding. Just because if you outsource the map, then you can keep reducing the scale of the device because then not all the computation's on it. So I think that's really, really exciting. I think from a design interaction point of view, I think there's a lot of work to do beyond, I call it magic paper, the history of computing. I hate magic windows, maybe it's because I'm dyslexic, so I don't like 2D. So I think when we start to get pass-through and proper AR, it'd be interesting to really explore that. Yeah. If anyone wants to catch me afterwards, I can rant on a bit more detail if there's some questions.
Yeah, we'll go pretty quickly to questions as well. So there, good person here to dig in on some of the deep knowledge that Q has on some of this technology. Okay, let's go to Sam, because Sam has been very deep in the trenches for some time, making virtual and augmented reality games and experiences, right in the pointy end of a big game at the moment. Wanderer, do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of some of the design challenges and that you guys have been having or facing at the moment, and any words of advice for people?
Yeah, sure. So I'll probably talk a little bit more generally about AR, MR and VR, because I won't go into too many of the problems that we're facing with Wanderer at the moment, apart from just trying to get a game out. But I guess in general, you probably look at sort of, in terms of spatial gaming in general, just thinking about the sort of space that you have to deal with. So that's obviously a big design challenge, and that you wouldn't have with flat screen gaming. You actually have, your environment to think about. So especially with VR and MR, thinking about the real world and real world interactions, and real world objects as well, and how they react across both AR, MR and VR. And I think along with that comes kind of real world and thinking about interactables within the space as well. So a lot of what we find in terms of, in developing Wanderer specifically is how we manage physics and haptics and some of that real world feel, which a lot of people then, when you're in VR, feel like it's gonna, you want that realism feeling. And so trying to match that can be really tricky. I mean, you want to try and get it as close as possible, but you're never going to get it exact. So I think there's a lot of challenges in just managing that. Generally as well, thinking about your audience, like who are you making the game for? Like any game, really. How does it, who are you creating the game for? What are your kind of key gameplay moments, your features, your functions? So thinking about that across all of those different mediums, there's so much, there's so much to consider. Some of what we're finding as well is in just playtesting, which I think you could never kind of underestimate how much playtesting any game needs, but it becomes even more so important in VR when you're so close to what you're doing, and then you get playtesters and just understanding, how people actually play your game. So that's really important, and within that, understanding accessibility and comfort levels. So, we've got you've got sort of locomotion built in, you've got teleportation and all of that sort of stuff, and just thinking about how different people access your game. What we found with Wanderer is when we first released in 2022, we'd been very used to creating a lot of content for sort of client-based content. VR was still a little bit new, and so we'd created sort of we'd probably been a little bit, we probably eased people into a little bit, and we found out that a lot of our audience wanted full-on locomotion. And so this time around we're going, fully into it, and we've got to be really conscious of how that balance works with hardcore VR gamers versus people who are probably, sort of not as hardcore but are still interested in playing puzzle adventure games. So there's a full gambit of stuff to consider within that, motion sickness, building what I would call sort of chunks of content, or gameplay within chunks of time, so you can allow for people to spend a few hours at a time, because you can get quite fatigued in AR, MR and VR. The fact that you've got a headset on, or you're having to hold your device in front of you, you can get quite fatigued in doing that. So there's a whole lot of different things to take into consideration when it comes to these mediums. But I think, like any good game, you also have to consider just what it takes to make a good game, your audience, what are you actually creating, what are those gameplay moments, how does story come into play, and not ignoring story. And then the last thing I'd just say on all of that is, not forgetting that you can actually build some amazing, impossible things, and kind of don't forget that you can do that with VR. You can take people to impossible places and create new and amazing things.
Yeah, it's really incredible, the motion stuff, which I found really interesting over this last decade. I was playing the Gorilla Tag the other night with my son, who's 10, and clearly his brain works very different from mine, because he put me at the top of a slide and wanted me to go down the slide with him, and it was like winding me down like this, and I was like, oh, I'm so gonna vomit, and he's just like, wee, this is so much fun. And I was just like, wow, our brains just, and our ability to take that motion is so different. And we also found when developing for the Apple Vision Pro, something that was really interesting was whether you made that choice between having a bound, whether your application was bound or unbounded, and so whether it was running concurrently with other applications. So you might have your nice little mini game here working, and then you might have some screens placed up here, and you can go back, or you've got a little pet, a little companion, and the ability to open multiple things and have them running at the same time was a really interesting thing to think about from both the technology, and how much power it was taking, and then the design of the games itself, or whether you needed the full power and you were just going to have the one thing up in your space. And that was quite a big factor that you needed to think about when choosing what you were going to do for designing for Apple Vision Pro, which I found quite an interesting thing and fun to play with, and a bit different from everything else that I designed for previously. And Stephen, you also have a deep in the trenches. I saw your game is out there at the moment for people to demo, a fun little VR party game, which I'm looking forward to having a play with later. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the opportunities that you see for people out here in the audience that you've been discovering yourself in this sector, both within gaming and potentially outside of gaming, just in spatial computing in general?
Sure. So we're focused on excuse me, mixed reality. So for me, it's like a blue ocean at the moment. Everything that's possible is possible. There hasn't been anything done yet that you can't try. It's just the whole thing is potential, which is really exciting for me. So I've been a work-for-hire developer for 15 years and working on other people's projects. And largely that means avoiding risk and taking other people's games and just tweaking them a little in game design to innovate a little bit. When you come to this new medium, everything about it is new. And the approach that we chose to take is not to look at existing computer games, but to look at things that exist already in like board games and sports, because mixed reality takes place in the real world. And it's got more parallels to things that are already happening in the real world. For me, what makes it unique is the power of movement. In VR, movement's a little tricky. You're always a bit worried you're going to crash into a wall or something. In mixed reality, that tether is taken away. You can run around, you can see each other, you won't smash into tables and stuff, and you can fully utilize the potential of each room that you're in. And when you move into a different room, the game feels completely different. If you're playing in a 3x3 meter lounge, cool. If you're playing in a sports stadium, like a basketball, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. If you're playing in a basketball court, the same gameplay feels completely different. And, it goes from being a fun activity to like a sport. And now it's like hardcore. And how does that change the gameplay? I would say it's extremely exciting to be working in this space, because you have the potential to find a mechanic that hasn't been done yet. You can find that Tetris or the Match 3 or the first-person shooter that hasn't been done yet. So that's what we're working towards. We're making a co-located mixed reality party game. And co-location is so special because you can have a social experience with people that you can see in real life, not an avatar. I can see you, and we can have that experience you get out of playing a board game, where the mechanics really exist just to create really special moments of social interaction with your other people. If you play Catan, for example, it's like, I need to negotiate. These are things that you can start playing with, which is awesome. The other aspect of it, I would say, is that mixed reality gaming is tricky. And I would say also that there's a lot of potential outside of gaming. Actually, when I started the company, my pitch was to make a mixed reality cooking application. And my boss is like, you've been a game developer 15 years, you sure want to make a cooking app? And I was like, actually, I've done a lot of research on this, and I think productivity type apps in mixed reality, especially when it gets to the glasses format, is going to be it's going to be transformative in the same way that like ChatGPT has been recently. Like, it's going to transform everything. So if you can be thinking about it now for when, and I would imagine about 5 years' time, we can actually have glasses, it's going to be like amazing.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And there are so many, I think now we have the audience, right? Thanks to Meta and largely, you know, we have those eyeballs. We have those people are playing and they are buying the hardware because it's affordable. So now is such a great opportunity to be experimenting. And I couldn't agree with you more around the physicality, like how important physicality and that movement is. When we made Oddball, it was a party game, but in virtual reality. And I can see Phil down there, and I'm sure he will be able to tell us some of the challenges we had with the tracking of it all being in VR and having 10 people in a room together, looking at each other's avatars and hoping they didn't smash into the pole in the middle of our studio, which mostly we avoided, but it was complicated. And so having that new, the advancements in having mixed reality and being able to see each other it would have solved a lot of the problems we had 5 or so years ago. So it's really great to see that ability, and it just opens up so many opportunities, I think, for developers here to be playing, because we have the audience and we have the hardware and it's affordable. So it's like this perfect timing, in my opinion. Anyone else want to add anything to that?
Yeah, well, so the way the system is that if you think of it as a SLAM camera facing outwards, so it builds a mesh of reality, which then is a statistical analysis. So then I can put that into a PyTorch, get my deep learning, and actually have a full understanding, like, what is this cup? And that's kind of like Connect last few years ago when you saw us doing what we call querying or coding reality, now is what Boz calls it. So a seminal paper would be like Swords of Damocles by Don Norman, published at Apple Research in '92, where he talks about reality is an information system. It's like this cup has already got a lot of embedded information and knowledge into it. So now as we start to move to that, that's kind of like how we think about it in the lab and what we're kind of pushing to be. So then that's like, what does that mean for gameplay? That we'll understand everything and where it is at all times. And then when you move out to, you'll probably see it Connect, Abrash's talk a couple of years ago, where we queried the fridge, which I don't like that demo, but everyone loves it. The exec team kind of loved it. But it tells you everything in your fridge, and then it can recommend a recipe for you. And then it can also tell you what's not there to make an order, or it can tell you, and it can know everything. So this is what we call what live maps will be, and that full live updating map of, let's say, your apartment or your shopping mall. So then, so Swords of Damocles is a good paper to read. Like, it kind of gets you into that. Design Patterns by Chris Alexander, like three-dimensional information systems that then led on to the Gang of Four for code. So we're kind of wrestling with that as a thought experiment at the moment, just because we're like, what is the three-dimensional map and what is that going to be, and how do we actually then, from a UX UI point, and after a decade, I've kind of got to a point now where Apple is like the godmother of interaction design and their pattern libraries for 2D, but actually that led us down a dark rabbit hole that actually didn't help us. And it seems to be still being reinforced, which I wish Carmack was back to kick someone or rattle something, but he's not. So I'm pretty anti-magic paper, is what I call it. That's like the history of computing today, and I'm pretty anti that. Why put a headset on that's a three-dimensional information system and then still put a two-dimensional window back into it? And then we all know, if you talk to neuroscientists, that we all actually are spatial reasoning machines that think faster in 3D. So that's kind of my rant about why I hate, and I'm dyslexic, right? So I am biased. So I hate text, I hate 2D. That's how my brain is. Hey.
I worked with Carmack directly there.
Yep.
Carmack's favorite application of VR was panels in space.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah, I know. It's just.
Yeah, which is valid. That's how I use it when I travel.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just what is the point of line maps, and what is it when we build that, and then it isn't to, and you might have seen a thing where we rotated a cup, we embed a rule, and then it turns up volume. So we're really pushing on that.
All right, I might interject now because that sounds way over my head and you guys can talk about that later and debate it. So now I'm going to move on to anyone who would like to ask questions because we have 10 minutes left. And so I can already see Ted has a million. Ted, do you want a mic?
Then I'm happy to proctor if I run out of the room.
Yeah. Wait.
Hi, I am new to this field, and I have some experience. No, hi, I'm Ted. You know me, Stephen. So Stephen, you're building a co-located party game, like dependent on co-location, right?
Not 100% dependent.
But
crazy.
The way this works best, you have a couple people playing in the space with the same headset. Obviously, from a meta side, like this is an untested market. We just see how it works. We're obviously, making bets with like a cheaper headset that hopefully will have more than one headset in homes. But how do you go about marketing this and getting people to a space? And you said something I pinned on, which is as a sport. So like people do go places together and bring things like sports equipment or drones or whatever. How are you going to get people to get outside their home? Or are you just going to hope that they have 4 headsets at home?
Well,
and then if you raise hands, I will bring this over to you for next questions.
Yeah, it's no accident that we called the game night. We know that people don't have more than one headset in their family, unless they've maybe upgraded from the Quest 2 to the Quest 3. We intentionally supported the Quest 2, even though it's black and white. The experience is still fun because you're having it with other people. But the idea is that you get your friends around. You might know someone else who has a Quest. And you can get everyone around, have a game night. So that's sort of our approach to the marketing of that problem. It's also the reason we haven't gone to the Apple Vision Pro yet, because, good Lord, I have no idea how you're going to find more than one of them in the local region, but sure. That's basically our hope. But I guess Meta are releasing cheaper and cheaper headsets, so the 3S is great. I've got one. You can try it out in the game.
And are you also targeting the arcade and family entertainment market as well for that, so that people will be able to license your game and have them within their own spaces internationally?
We've had a lot of interest actually from retirement homes, libraries, hotels. I haven't even reached out to these places yet. They were on my, I'll do that after we launch and then we'll solve that problem if things go horribly wrong. But yeah, I mean, if you can imagine our experience being played in a retirement home where it's getting people active and engaged, and if you see any of the games that they play now and you're like, these are not, they could do so much better. So yeah, I'm excited about that space as well.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it too, and it's so wonderful to see people playing physical games and sweating and being active. I think we have a lot of people who are very anti, the types of games we have, and I think this kind of turns it on its head, which is something really wonderful, and why we're seeing the fitness side of things being pushed so much and fitness applications. And so outside of games, although I think that gamified fitness is kind of the way to go, there are huge opportunities just in fitness as a whole. I think that's quite a big market and an opportunity for those interested in that area. And then, of course, just any applications, like you say, cooking applications, recipes, all of these types of applications are just going to keep growing and offer people the opportunity right now to be exploring the lifestyle apps. Meta have an accelerator at the moment, or coming up soon, for people interested in lifestyle applications. Do we have any other questions? Yes.
Oh, my name's Luke. I developed flat games for about a decade, but I'm a Quest consumer, so I'm into playing games in sort of the spatial world. But I've been interested in, because I've noticed myself, I suffer from motion sickness, so I thought, hey, this VR thing's not going to be for me. I have to take medication to fly on a plane without feeling sick, so how am I going to get into VR? And it was not until I did some research that I figured out, well, this is a thing you can sort of change about yourself potentially. Like you said, everyone's different, but the first idea people seem to have is like, oh, this is just how I am. You can handle VR. Oh, I guess I can't, so I can't do it. And it got me thinking about, with flat games, we think about, is this game for somebody who's new, or is it for somebody who's like a veteran, and what are their different needs? And I was just interested to ask the panel in general, like, what are your thoughts on how do you develop a game thinking about who is this for along the spectrum of like hardcore users? Especially for Sam, actually, hardcore VR users are a very vocal minority, but they buy a lot of the games. Yeah, and then how do you go wide? Because they seem to have such different needs, and people who come in the door via something that's like teleport movement or whatever, they might get sick of that and then be like, oh, I need something more intense.
Yes, we're awesome. Let's jump straight to Sam then. Thank you. And it's great to have players in the room. Yay.
Thank you. And look, Wanderer's probably not for the faint-hearted of VR, but there are things in there, like teleportation. And actually, I think I get really, really motion sick, and I've been doing a lot of play testing of the game. And I literally can't do locomotion in the game, so teleportation helps me a lot. But I actually find the physicality, the movement, helps me. So the more physical I can get in VR, because it's actually how I'm moving, helps me a lot. I can't play flat screen games with a controller. I get motion sick watching my son play Minecraft. It's that bad. So for me, the physicality actually really helps. So the more we have, and we've got a ton in the game, we've really upped that. So I think, and again, it is one of those games that has a mix of everything. There's like environments to explore, there's a lot of action, adventure, but there's different levels of comfort, so we allow for that right up front. We've got settings you can change from standing to sitting from the beginning. We have different levels of combat comfort as well. So I think just allowing for those, we can't be everything to everyone. We also know we've got to make a commercial game as well, but essentially just trying to appeal to as many of those, different access points as we can. And if we can make a game that I can get into and kind of move around in, for a couple of hours at a time, I think a lot of people can probably get into it. But I mean, as Jess was saying, I think what we are finding is the younger generation is just so much more used to being and playing in this space. They are growing up with Minecraft. I know that females are more prone to being motion sick than males, and so it'll be interesting to see what the kind of next generation getting used to and growing up with things like Minecraft. And there's a stat came out earlier in the year that 33% of teens in the States now own a VR headset, which is massive. So it'll just be really interesting to see how that changes and what that actually does to motion sickness in general, because I get motion sick in a car, reading my phone and all of that. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, often when we're looking at our audiences, it's like, what games do they already like? What do they play? And so then we define that audience by that rather than saying, oh, they're 16-year-old boys, or, they're 30 to, 25 to 30-year-old women who are into fitness. We can we drill that down by going, oh, they like this game and they play that game. So I think that, based on us testing this, and then we do find the fun thing, right? We make the little mechanic and we get the users and players in and we test it. And if they like it, then we go, great, let's carry on with that, because it's so often that little mechanic in XR or VR that is that key little bit of funness, and it's pretty easy to test that. Alex here in the audience has some opportunities. So, we've worked together and we're just getting those people in, trying two different things and saying, what do they like, and then prototyping and moving quickly along from that. Now we're almost out of time, so I think we've got time for maybe one final question. Yep, we have done here. Awesome. Yeah, push that little button and please do introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Chesna. I'm from Pickpock. In one line, can you please tell us what is your favorite MR or VR game to play?
Oddball.
Thank you. And then, everyone down the line, please. Thank you.
I'm going to cheat and say game night because I made it, and I haven't seen anything like it yet. So.
I'm an oddball. I don't play games in VR. I work on the map, so I'm pretty down the rabbit hole of the boring nuts and bolts questions. But I am excited to see that we're moving away from controllers and what Apple has been pushing on that hand interaction. And
One line. Next one.
I'm not going to cheat and say Wanderer, but I think Batman Arkham Knight for me was probably one of the best ones I played. Yeah, but Wanderer actually.
Awesome. Ted,
Hi,
do you want to
I'm
add?
Ted,
Ted's
and
joined
I'm
the
on
panel
this
today.
I see so much VR. My answer is currently still the Under Presents by Tender Claws, because you couldn't do it in any other medium, and it represents a new category of media, which is how do we blend immersive theater at scale. That's it.
Love it. Love it. Won it. He did it. Go, Ted. All right. Hey, thank you. Big hands together for our wonderful panel and our extra panel member and helper over there, Ted. Thank you, everybody. Please make sure you support everybody's games. Try it, share it, and grab anyone afterwards and have a chat. I'm sure they will be available to talk. And thank you for coming.